The third scenario that we're going to look at for P4M2D2 is when a sheep might need to be removed from its pen for maybe shearing or examination. So how can this best be done? So the best way you can do it is move your body around to maneuver the sheep into a corner of a pen or against the rest of the flock. You can actually put pens in, so you can put gates in to be able to corner the pen into a smaller area, and then you've got to move it so that it's into the corner of the pen and really is restricted then from running away and hurting itself. This is called the mustering method, and you catch the sheep with one hand on the rump and the underneath the jaw, or you can use the scruff method and get it on the back of the neck, but underneath the jaw is better because sometimes the back of the neck tends to be a little bit sensitive. So really underneath its jaw and one on its rump, on its back. Turn the sheep's head around as far away as possible from yourself. Move yourself around with the sheep following, and the sheep will go down its rump. So you can also put your knees above the sheep as well, so you can lean against the sheep or put your knees over the sheep and sort of almost like straddle the sheep. Pivoting your head around, pivoting yourself around backwards with your knees and legs above the sheep makes the sheep go down its rump, especially if you lift its head and push down on its rump. A process called tupping, and then you lean the sheep against your knees and apply pressure with both knees to get a good grip. To release the sheep, you just sort of let it go onto its front legs again, and it will quickly retain a sort of a standing position. There's quite a lot of information on the internet if you want to see in more detail and get some photographs. It's quite difficult to explain just by talking it through. So if you Google the mustering method on a sheep, or the best way to sort of restrain a sheep, then you'll find quite a lot of information, and you'll also find out some information then about putting a harness around it as well, so you can actually harness it then, so that if you want to move it from one pen to another, then you can do. Gloves used, sheep can pass on infection and parasites. So in terms of PPE, personal protective equipment for M2, gloves can be used, pass on parasites, and then wash the gloves afterwards. It prevents any zoonotic diseases, any diseases that pass from animals onto humans from passing across, and also doesn't just protect the handler, but also stops the handler then from passing on any infection then to another sheep. So gloves can be washed. Goggles used extra precaution to the eyes, and overalls again to prevent hygiene and spread of infection. So again, your overalls can be regularly washed, and therefore that means that there's less chance of spreading any infection. Evaluate how this method might be changed. Well, if the animal's stressed, then you might decide you want to use a harness, or you might want to pen it in, or you might try and want to isolate it from the rest of the flock if it's stressed before you actually handle it. So different reasons about how to go. So extra pens and extra gates then to try and isolate it. You might also get a second person as well. So a second person then might be able to herd it into a corner. You might be able to sort of press it into a corner then before you get your hand underneath its jaw and onto its rump. And as I say, a harness as well prevents it being stressed once it's in the harness. Less stressed, as we said, are part of a flock, so it might be necessary to shear the sheep alongside the rest of the flock and then release them one at a time. So keep them with the flock if you feel as if it's going to be stressed by removing it from the flock. But if you can't handle it because it's part of a flock, then you might want to sort of isolate it to one side to actually handle it, to put a harness on it, but then keep it near the rest of the flock if it's still agitated once you've restrained it. Useful to have a second handler to help secure the stressed animal. We've already mentioned that. So if the sheep escapes, then the muster method can be reused to re-secure the animal, by manoeuvring it into an enclosed area. So you might decide, okay, you're going to get it into a penned area to re-secure it again then. And if the sheep is docile and stress-free, it might be just appropriate to do other things whilst you've got it. So sheep dipping, so that's a process of passing it through some pesticides. So pesticides remove parasites, so sheep tend to get ticks which burrow into the skin and extract blood from the animal, so bite and extract and feed off the animal's blood. So sheep dipping and putting them through a sheep dip, which is liquid, as I say, for removing parasites might be appropriate. Hoof trimming as well, so having a look at their hooves, inspecting their hooves, trimming their hooves back and cleaning their hooves, ear tagging and inspecting teeth as well. So all of those things might be done at the same time once you've restrained the sheep, especially if it seems to be stress-free once it's been restrained.